At 3:15 p.m., the bustling airport fell silent as security called in 14 police dogs to surround a small girl clutching a stuffed bunny. Clara, just 7 years old, stood frozen, her innocent eyes wide with confusion and fear as whispers of suspicious behavior rippled through the crowd. In that moment, her mother's desperate cries for justice echoed against the cold tiles, revealing a hidden betrayal within their own family. The dogs, trained for danger, found only a child's fragile heart racing in the chaos. My name is Clara. Justice may be blind, but today it opened its eyes. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched the police dogs sniff around me, their noses twitching with curiosity rather than aggression. I didn't understand what I had done wrong. I was just looking for my mom. The world around me spun into a blur of uniforms and shouting, and all I could focus on was that familiar face, the one I loved most in the whole world. Sarah's panic was palpable, and it felt as if I could reach out and touch her fear, like a thick fog hanging over us. "Clara, baby, are you okay?" she shouted, her voice barely cutting through the commotion. I nodded, my throat tight, but I could see the worry etched across her face. As much as I wanted to assure her, words failed me, tangled in the web of confusion and fear wrapping around us. It was supposed to be a simple trip to the airport, just the two of us like always, but now everything felt like a storm ready to break. Officer Reed stood nearby, his brow furrowed as he watched the scene unfold. I could see the internal conflict in his eyes. He was trying to do his job, yet part of him looked like he wanted to reach out, to help instead of hinder. He glanced at me, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. I thought I saw a flicker of understanding pass between us, a silent recognition of innocence caught in a web of protocols that seemed far too harsh for a little girl. "Do you have any weapons?" one of the officers shouted, his voice booming through the chaos. I shook my head vigorously. I didn't even have a toy in my pocket, just a crumpled map of the airport that I had been examining like it held the secrets of the universe. Sarah's face turned even paler, and I could see her fists clenching and unclenching at her sides, the tension radiating from her body. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be all right, but I felt so small, so powerless amidst the towering adults and barking dogs. The rumble of conversations around us became a cacophony, a dissonant soundtrack to my growing anxiety. What did I do? I whispered to myself, confusion swirling in my mind. My little hands trembled, and I dug my fingernails into my palms, trying to anchor myself. All I had wanted was to explore the vast expanse of the airport, the shiny floors and bright lights luring me into a world that felt magical. Now, it felt like I had fallen into a nightmare where no one was listening. Suddenly, from the edge of the crowd, a familiar face emerged. David. I blinked, disbelief washing over me. There he was, the man I had heard stories about but never truly knew. His presence was both comforting and alarming, a reminder of the broken pieces of our family. I watched as he approached, his eyes wide with concern, and I felt a strange mix of emotions. The last time I had seen him was during one of those brief encounters where awkwardness filled the air like an uninvited guest. Now he was here, and I didn't know what to expect. "Clara," he called, his voice cutting through the noise, a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. I turned toward him, feeling a strange pull, like gravity was trying to bring our family back together, even if just for a moment. "What happened?" he asked Sarah, his tone softening as he took in the chaos around us. His eyes darted toward the officers, and I could sense the urgency in his voice. "They think she's a threat," Sarah replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "But she's just a little girl. She didn't do anything wrong." The desperation in her words clawed at my heart. I hated that my existence had caused her so much distress. I wanted to assure her, to run to her and let her know I was all right, but the distance between us felt like an ocean, vast and unyielding. "Clara, sweetheart, can you come here? David asked, kneeling down as he extended his arms. I hesitated, unsure if I was allowed to move, caught between the shouts of authority and my desire to feel safe. The police dogs barked in the distance, and every sound seemed amplified, echoing my own heartbeat. But then I saw David's eyes soften, his expression a mix of fear and love, and I took a step forward, instinctively reaching out for him. As I ran, I felt the weight of judgment lift, even if just for a second. David wrapped his arms around me, and I breathed in the smell of his aftershave, something I had missed more than I realized. "It's okay, Clara. You're safe now," he whispered, his voice a soothing balm against the chaos surrounding us. I clung to him, feeling the warmth of family, a feeling I had longed for during the many nights I lay awake wondering about him. "Sir, you need to step back," an officer interjected, but David held his ground, his grip on me tightening protectively. "She's just a kid. You're scaring her," he said, his voice steady despite the tension. I could sense the shift in the atmosphere. The officers exchanged glances, unsure of how to proceed. Officer Reed stepped forward, still conflicted, but clearly trying to assess the situation with a sense of humanity. "Let's take a moment," he finally said, raising his hands as if trying to create a barrier against the confusion. "This is a misunderstanding, and we need to handle it calmly." I felt a surge of hope at his words, a flicker of light piercing through the shadows of the day. Perhaps this could end well after all. Officer Reed's voice broke through the noise like a soothing melody, and I felt the tension in my little body begin to loosen, even if just a fraction. I glanced at my mom, Sarah, who was rushing toward me, her expression shifting from panic to determination. I could see the worry etched on her face, and for a moment, I wanted to run to her, to wrap my arms around her and reassure her that everything would be okay. Yet, I stood frozen, caught between the confusion of the airport chaos and the warmth of my mother's presence. As Sarah reached me, she knelt down, her eyes scanning my face as if searching for the remnants of my spirit beneath the whirlwind of fear. "Clara, honey, are you all right?" she asked, her voice a mix of urgency and love. I nodded, though my heart raced like a wild animal trapped in a cage, and I could see the way her brow furrowed in response. She then turned to Officer Reed, her hands shaking slightly. "What's happening? Why is my daughter being treated like this?" Officer Reed took a deep breath, trying to calm her down as much as the situation would allow. "There was a misunderstanding, ma'am. We just need to ensure the safety of everyone in the airport." His words were meant to provide reassurance, but I could see the weight of the situation in his eyes. I wished for clarity, for a way to erase the confusion, but all I could do was watch as the crowd around us began to swell with curiosity and concern, their murmurs creating a wall of sound that felt suffocating. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a voice that pierced through the din. "Clara!" It was David, my father, his tall figure breaking through the throng of people. I hadn't seen him in so long, and the sight of him standing there, his face lined with worry, made my heart flutter in a strange mix of joy and confusion. "What's going on?" he demanded, rushing toward us, his expression frantic but protective. I remembered the stories Sarah used to tell about how strong he had been, how he once carried me on his shoulders while we explored the park. Now, however, he seemed lost in a sea of worry, just like the rest of us. "David," Sarah said, disbelief laced in her tone, "what are you doing here?" Her eyes darted between him and me, searching for answers that none of us could provide. I could feel the tension rise again, and I wanted to reach out to bridge the gap that seemed to widen with each second. "I heard about the chaos at the airport and came as quickly as I could," he replied, his voice cracking slightly. "I just wanted to make sure she was safe." "Why now?" Sarah shot back, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "You've been gone for years. You think you can just waltz in and play the hero?" The rawness of her feelings hung in the air, and I could see the hurt in her eyes, a hurt that had lingered long after David had left us. I wanted to scream for both of them to stop, to just focus on me, but I felt like a small boat bobbing on tumultuous waters, unable to redirect the storm that was brewing. Officer Reed, sensing the rising tension, stepped in again. "Let's all take a breath. Clara is fine, and we'll sort this out." He looked at me, his voice softening. "It's just that some of our security protocols can be a bit overwhelming. I promise you, we're here to help." It was as if his words broke through the barrier of anxiety, if only momentarily. I took a breath, hoping my family could feel the calmness I tried to project, but it was still hard to shake the weight of uncertainty. As I watched them, the adults who were supposed to protect me, I wished they could remember what it felt like to be a child, to see the world through innocent eyes without the burdens of adulthood clouding their judgment. "Can we please just focus on Clara?" David pleaded, his voice carrying the desperation of a father who had lost too much time. He moved closer to me, kneeling down and looking directly into my eyes. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry you're in the middle of this. I promise I'll make it better." His words wrapped around my heart, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was my chance to help them see what I had always believed, that families could find a way to heal, even when it seemed impossible. "Mom," I said softly, breaking the suffocating silence, "can we all just talk?" I didn't know how much power my small voice held, but it felt necessary to bridge the gap between them, to remind them that I was here, needing them both. Sarah looked down at me, her expression softening as if my plea had reached her. "Yes, Clara, we can talk," she said, her tone turning tender. The anger in her eyes began to fade, replaced by a layer of care that had been buried beneath the surface for too long. As I glanced back at David, I could see him struggling with his own regrets, the weight of lost years pressing down on him. "I don't want you to be scared," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." In that moment, surrounded by chaos, I realized that even when it felt like everything was unraveling, love was still there, waiting to be reignited. I wished that the same love could fill the gaps between my parents, healing the wounds that had kept us apart. "Can we start fresh?" I asked, feeling a brave warmth rising in me. "Please?" Officer Reed stood by, silently observing this family reunion, the tension in the air beginning to shift. The echoes of barking dogs faded into the background, and for the first time that day, I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps, amidst the confusion, we could find our way back to each other. As we gathered in a small huddle, I grasped both of their hands, holding on tightly as if I could weave our hearts together. In that fragile moment, I realized that healing takes time, but the desire to mend what was broken could be the first step toward our new beginning. The chaos of the airport faded into a dull roar, and all I wanted was to ensure that my family could rediscover the beauty of being together, despite everything that had come between us. If you enjoyed this continuation of Clara's journey and want to see how her family finds their way back to each other, consider subscribing for more heartfelt stories about love, healing, and the bonds that unite us. As I sat on the cold, hard floor of the airport terminal, my heart raced wildly in my chest. The commotion around me was overwhelming, a cacophony of voices and barking dogs that seemed to blur together. I glanced up and saw a looming figure approaching. It was Officer Reed, his uniform stark against the bright lights of the airport. His brow was furrowed, and I could see the tension in his jaw as he surveyed the scene. I felt a mix of fear and curiosity bubbling inside me. Was I really that much trouble? Just then, I spotted my mother, Sarah, weaving her way through the crowd, her face a mixture of determination and worry. Her hair was slightly disheveled, and I could see that she had left her bag behind in the rush. I longed to jump up and run to her, but the officers around me seemed to be keeping a close eye on me, as if I were some dangerous criminal rather than just a little girl caught in a misunderstanding. Despite my fear, I could see my mother's love radiating toward me, pulling me like a warm blanket. "Clara," she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. I felt a swell of relief wash over me, the kind that made my heart flutter. When she reached me, she knelt down, wrapping me in a tight embrace. The scent of her familiar perfume, mixed with the faint whiff of airport coffee, comforted me. I could feel her trembling, and it dawned on me that she was just as scared as I was. "Mom, I didn't mean to cause any trouble," I whispered, peering up into her eyes. She seemed to relax a little, although I could see the shadows of exhaustion and frustration etched into her features. It struck me then just how hard she worked to keep everything together. "They thought I had something bad," I added, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah pulled back slightly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll figure this out." I could tell she was trying to be strong for me, but I could also see the doubt lurking behind her brave smile. Just as she was about to say something more, a low growl cut through the air, sending a chill down my spine. I turned to see one of the police dogs, its nose close to the ground, sniffing at my shoelaces. I held my breath, wondering if this was how a little girl got taken away by the police. The barking intensified as more dogs joined the fray, their handlers keeping a tight grip on their leashes. I could see the officers whispering among themselves, and I felt the weight of their scrutiny. I glanced back at my mother, her face now a mask of concern. "Stay close to me, Clara. I won't let anything happen to you," she promised, though I could tell she was just as anxious about the outcome as I was. In the midst of the chaos, I suddenly spotted a familiar figure standing at the edge of the crowd. My heart leaped, and I blinked in disbelief. It was Dad, David. I hadn't seen him in so long, not since the arguments and tears had driven us apart. He looked older, more worn than I remembered, but there was something in his eyes that made me hope he cared. I had always dreamed of a family where we were all together, but seeing him now felt like a reminder of the empty space he had left behind. "Dad," I called out, surprising both him and myself. The moment my voice broke through the noise, several heads turned in our direction. I could sense the tension shift as my father approached. Looking conflicted, as if he wasn't sure whether to rush to me or hang back in shame. "Clara," he said softly, kneeling down in front of me. The authority of Officer Reed faded into the background, and for a moment, it felt like it was just the three of us. "I'm so sorry. I got here as fast as I could." His words tumbled into my heart like raindrops, washing away some of the fear and uncertainty. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice wavering. "I heard what happened, and I wanted to make sure you were okay." His gaze flicked to Sarah, and I could see the awkwardness hanging between them like a thick cloud. The years of absence and unresolved feelings seemed to swirl around us, and I wished desperately for a way to break the silence that lingered in the air. "David," Sarah began, her tone measured but firm, "this isn't the time." He raised a hand, cutting her off. "No, you're right, but she needs us both right now." "Clara, listen to me," he said, turning his focus back to me. "You're safe, okay? None of this is your fault." I nodded slowly, feeling a strange mix of emotions. I wanted to feel angry at him for leaving, but at that moment, I felt something different. Maybe it was hope. Perhaps we could find a way to heal these deep, aching wounds. The dogs continued to bark, and the officers whispered among themselves. But for a fleeting moment, I felt a flicker of unity between my parents. "Can we just go home?" I pleaded, my voice small and fragile. "I don't want to be here anymore." Sarah and David exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, my mother nodded. "Yes, let's go home, together." The sincerity in her voice ignited something in me. Maybe we could face whatever came next as a family, with all the pieces still scattered around us. In that instant, I believed in the possibility of starting anew, of weaving together the threads of our lives. With that fragile hope in my heart, I took each of their hands, and together, we began to walk away from the chaos of the airport, ready to face the journey ahead. As we stepped out of the bustling airport, the air felt different. It was tinged with a sense of relief, mixed with the lingering tension from the earlier chaos. The sun was shining brightly, illuminating the path ahead. I held tightly to both my mother's hand and my father's, feeling the warmth of their presence, even if the distance between us was still palpable. It was a confusing whirlwind of emotions, fear, confusion, and something that felt like hope. I noticed people hurrying past us, their lives unchanged by the events that had unfolded moments before. I felt like an island in a sea of travelers, our little trio standing still while the world rushed by. "Can we sit for a moment?" I asked, my voice small yet determined. I needed to catch my breath and process everything. Sarah looked at me with concern, then nodded, leading us to a nearby bench. As we sat down, I could feel the weight of the past settling around us. I glanced at my mother first, her face lined with worry, and I wanted to reach out and ease her burden. "Mom, I'm okay," I reassured her. She offered me a small smile, but I could see that her eyes were still clouded with worry. "Clara, I'm so sorry you had to go through that," she said softly, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "I never thought, I didn't expect." Her voice trailed off, and I could sense her frustration, the way she wrestled with her inability to protect me from the confusion of the world outside. It wasn't just about the airport incident, it was everything else that had happened before. I could see that she was struggling with how to balance being a mother while holding her own life together. "I'm glad you're here, Mom, and Dad too," I said, looking at David, who seemed lost in thought. He was gazing at the ground, his brow furrowed, as if he were trying to work out some complex puzzle. I could feel the unspoken words hanging in the air, and a wave of courage washed over me. "Dad, can you tell me why you've been away?" I asked, my voice steady but soft. The question hung heavily between us, like a bridge stretching into the unknown. He looked up, startled, and for a moment I thought he might retreat into silence again. But instead he took a deep breath and seemed to gather his thoughts. "Clara," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "I made some choices a long time ago that I regret. I thought I was doing the right thing, but it turned out wrong, and it hurt everyone I loved." His words hung in the air, raw and vulnerable, and I could see the guilt etched across his face. "I thought staying away would make things easier for you and your mom, but I see now that I was wrong." I felt a surge of emotions, anger, confusion, but also a flicker of understanding. "It hurt," I admitted, "when you weren't there. I thought you didn't want to be with us." My voice wavered slightly, but I pressed on. "I wished you could have come to my birthday parties or just said hello once in a while. It felt lonely." As I spoke, I could see tears welling up in his eyes, reflecting a depth of sorrow I hadn't realized was there. Sarah shifted slightly beside me, and I sensed that she was listening closely, absorbing every word. "David, it's never too late to make amends," she finally spoke, her tone gentle yet firm. "Clara needs you in her life, just as I need your support too. It's going to take time, but if we want to rebuild what we lost, we have to be willing to try." I was surprised at how powerful her words were, the way they hung in the air, offering a fragile yet palpable sense of hope. David nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling within him. "I want to try," he said, his voice steadier now. "I want to be part of your lives, and I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." It was the first time I had ever heard him express such a commitment, and it filled me with cautious optimism. "Can we start with ice cream?" I suggested, a small grin breaking across my face. My mother laughed lightly, the sound a sweet relief against the heaviness of our earlier conversation. "Ice cream can fix almost anything," she agreed, her eyes sparkling with a hint of mischief. David's expression softened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of the father I longed for, one who was willing to be present and engage with us. As we stood up from the bench, I felt a sense of unity building between us, fragile yet determined. We walked toward the ice cream shop, and I could hear the chatter of families around us, the playful laughter of children, and it filled the air with warmth. We each picked out our favorite flavors, and as I savored the cold sweetness, I could see David and Sarah sharing glances, tentative yet filled with promise. "Maybe we can have more family days like this?" I suggested, looking up at them both, my heart racing with excitement. "Maybe we can visit the park or play games together?" They exchanged looks, and I noticed that Sarah's smile broadened, while David nodded vigorously, enthusiasm illuminating his features. "Absolutely," David replied, his voice firm with determination. "Whatever it takes, Clara, I want to be there for you." The words wrapped around me like a warm blanket, and I felt a sense of belonging that I hadn't realized I had been missing. As we finished our ice cream, I caught sight of Officer Reed from earlier, standing at the airport entrance. His stern expression had softened, and he looked at us with an understanding that felt reassuring. I waved, and to my surprise, he waved back, a small smile breaking across his face. In that moment, the chaos of the airport seemed far away, a mere backdrop to the joy blooming between us. Perhaps this was the beginning of something beautiful, a new chapter in our family story. As we walked out of the airport hand in hand, I felt the weight of our past slowly lifting. Together, we were ready to face whatever came next, ready to embrace the journey ahead with open hearts. As we stepped out into the cool, crisp air, the world outside the airport felt like a different place, bathed in the golden light of the late afternoon sun. I could hear the soft rustle of leaves and the distant sound of laughter, the normalcy of it all reminding me that we were, indeed, a family again, however fragile that might feel. My hand was securely clasped in my mother's, and beside us, my father walked with cautious steps, as if afraid to disturb the delicate balance we had just begun to restore. It was surreal, the way everything had shifted in such a short time. I could see my mother glancing at David, and I wondered if she was thinking about all the years that had been lost between them. Years filled with silence and missed opportunities. "Where should we go now?" I asked, my voice breaking the quiet moment that lingered between us. I was eager to keep the warmth of our reunion alive, to turn this awkwardness into something vibrant and joyful. Sarah looked down at me, her eyes brightening for the first time since the airport incident, and for a moment, I saw the weight of her worries lift. "How about ice cream?" she suggested, her smile widening, revealing a glimpse of the mother I adored. "Yes, ice cream!" I cheered, bouncing on my toes, feeling the excitement bubble within me. The simple joy of a scoop of chocolate chip mint was enough to make me forget all the turmoil we had just experienced. David chuckled, a sound that filled the air with warmth, and I turned to him, my eyes wide with hope. "Do you like ice cream, Dad?" I asked, and he paused, clearly taken aback by the question. "Of course I do, Clara. Who doesn't love ice cream?" His voice was steady, but I could hear a hint of uncertainty, as if he were still figuring out how to navigate this new space between us. As we began to walk toward the nearby ice cream shop, I couldn't help but notice how the atmosphere around us had transformed. The once bustling airport seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the vibrant sounds of children playing and the sweet aroma of waffle cones wafting through the air. I felt a sense of hope blooming within me, like a flower pushing through the cracks of concrete. It was a fragile hope, but it was there nonetheless. Once we arrived at the shop, I was instantly captivated by the colorful array of flavors displayed behind the glass. Each one looked more tempting than the last. I glanced up at my mother and father, both lost in their own conversations, and decided to explore the menu for myself. I wanted to make the right choice, something that would delight both my taste buds and my spirit. "Can I have 2 scoops, Mom?" I asked, looking back at Sarah, whose eyes sparkled at my enthusiasm. "Why not? You've had quite an adventure today," she replied with a grin, her confidence returning inch by inch. I beamed and leaned closer to the counter, scanning the options. "I want chocolate chip mint and strawberry," I announced, feeling a surge of excitement. While the server scooped my chosen flavors into a cone, I glanced back at David, who was quietly studying the menu, his expression thoughtful. It struck me how strange it was to see him here, participating in something so simple and normal, as if he had stepped out of a different world and into mine. I hoped that this little outing could help mend the rift between us, just like my 2 scoops of ice cream merging together in a perfect swirl. After we received our treats, we found a small table outside, the sun casting gentle shadows around us. As I took my first bite of the cold, creamy ice cream, a wave of happiness washed over me. The flavors danced on my tongue, and for a fleeting moment, I forgot about the chaos that had led us to this point. I caught my mother's eye and she grinned, raising her cone in a mock toast. "To new beginnings," she said, and David joined in, lifting his own cone. "To new beginnings," I echoed, feeling the warmth of their presence envelop me like a soft blanket. We began to talk, slowly at first, sharing small stories about our day and laughing over silly memories that had once seemed too far away. I could see the tension between my parents begin to dissipate, replaced by tentative smiles and shared glances. It was as if we were rediscovering the threads that had connected us all along, albeit frayed. In that moment, something shifted within me as well. I realized that while the past had shaped us, it didn't have to dictate our future. I didn't want to dwell on the mistakes or the hurt. Instead, I wanted to forge a path forward, one filled with love and understanding. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the horizon in hues of orange and pink, I felt a sense of belonging wrap around me. "Do you think we can go on a family trip sometime?" I blurted out, my eyes sparkling with hope. David and Sarah exchanged a glance, their expressions uncertain but intrigued. "Where would you want to go?" David asked, his tone light but genuine. "I don't know. Maybe the beach?" I suggested, picturing us building sandcastles and splashing in the waves, a picture of unity that had eluded us for so long. Sarah nodded slowly, her smile widening. "The beach sounds wonderful, Clara. Maybe we can make that happen." We continued to share ideas, laughter spilling over as we moved from the beach to other adventures we could have together. I could feel the moment solidifying, the tiny cracks in our family being filled with hope and possibility. As we finished our ice cream and prepared to leave, I caught a glimpse of Officer Reed, the airport security officer who had initially set off the chaos with his stern demeanor. He walked by, and I waved. To my surprise, he waved back, a flicker of understanding passing between us. Perhaps he, too, had learned something that day about the importance of compassion and seeing beyond the surface. As we walked away from the ice cream shop, hand in hand, I could feel the laughter ringing in my ears. It was a sound I hoped to hear more often, one that could shatter the silence that had once hung between us. The road ahead would not always be easy, but as I looked up at my parents, I knew we were ready to face it together, one scoop of ice cream at a time. Have you ever experienced a moment that transformed your family relationships? Share your stories. As I watched the laughter ripple between my parents, the weight of the chaotic events at the airport began to lift, replaced with a warm sense of possibility. I felt like a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis, ready to explore the vastness of the world, but, more importantly, my family's heart. It was surprising how a day that began with confusion and fear had shifted to one of hope and connection. Sarah wiped her eyes, still glistening with unshed tears, and as she caught my gaze, I could see something change in her demeanor. There was a flicker of resilience, a determination that maybe, just maybe, we could start anew. "Clara," Sarah said, her voice steady yet soft, "I want to make sure you know that you are safe now. We're all together, and that's what really matters." It was the first time I could hear the sincerity in her words, and they wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I nodded, understanding that she was trying to bridge the gaps that had long been silent between us. The air felt lighter, as if a storm had passed, leaving behind only the calm after the rain. In that moment, I wanted to help them, to give back the love they had shown me. I turned to David, who was watching us with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. His brows knitted together, as though he were thinking deeply about the weight of what had just happened. I could sense that he too wanted to be part of this new chapter, yet there was a hesitation in his movements, a shadow of the past lingering in the background. "Dad," I called out softly, breaking through his pensive state. "Would you like to come with us? We could all go to the park. It would be fun." David's face softened, and for a moment, a flicker of hope sparked in his eyes. "I'd love that," he replied, the warmth in his tone melting away some of the apprehension. Sarah smiled, and I could see the corners of her mouth lift as she realized we were weaving together our fractured threads into something more whole. As we made our way out of the airport, the chaos of the earlier incident faded into the background, replaced by a shared purpose. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden rays that bathed everything in a soft glow. I thought about how just hours ago I had felt so small and scared, but now I walked hand in hand with my parents, all of us committed to embracing this moment. The park was just a short drive away, and during the ride, I couldn't help but notice the little things. How Sarah glanced at David every now and then, her expression shifting from cautious to hopeful. David was animated as he pointed out various landmarks along the way, as if trying to catch up on the years he had missed. It felt surreal to be in the car with them, this makeshift family unit, learning to navigate the same space once more. Once we arrived, the park was alive with laughter and the sounds of children playing. My heart raced with excitement, and I led the charge toward the swings, dragging my parents behind me. "Come on, let's play," I shouted, my voice piercing through the air like a rallying cry. Sarah exchanged a look with David, and I could see her eyes urging him to join in on the fun. With a small chuckle, he stepped forward, and before I knew it, they were both pushing me on the swing, their laughter mingling with the breeze. I soared higher and higher, feeling like I was flying, and for a moment, all my worries evaporated. As I swung back and forth, I caught glimpses of their faces, both glowing with joy. I wanted this moment to last forever. It felt like the pieces of our family were finally falling into place. After a while, we settled on a blanket under a sprawling oak tree, enjoying snacks that Sarah had packed. The sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. In this serene atmosphere, I felt compelled to ask the question that had been swirling in my mind ever since David had appeared at the airport. "Dad, why did you leave us?" I didn't want to sound accusatory, just curious, as I sought to understand the man who was part of my existence but had been so distant for so long. He paused, his expression turning somber as he considered his words. "Clara, I made mistakes. I thought leaving would make things easier for you and your mom, but I see now how wrong I was," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I can't change the past, but I want to be here for you both now." I could see the pain in his eyes, a reflection of the regrets that had haunted him. Sarah reached over, placing her hand on David's arm, a gesture of solidarity. "It's not just about what happened before, it's about what we choose to do now, together." Her words resonated deep within me, revealing a truth I had always sensed, but hadn't fully comprehended until now. I felt a warmth growing inside of me as I watched them, and I wanted to tell them both that I believed in second chances. "I think we can be a family again," I said, my voice steady despite the uncertainty that lay ahead. "We just need to keep trying." The look exchanged between my parents was filled with understanding, a silent agreement that echoed my own hopes. In that moment, I realized that our journey was just beginning, and while we had a long way to go, we were finally heading in the right direction. The sunset painted the horizon, and with it, I felt the promise of new beginnings. We were together now, and that made all the difference.